Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to go over the 10 tips to becoming a better programmer and software developer. Now, the request for this came from someone who was interested in becoming a better programmer in C#, but I would tell you that it doesn't matter what programming language you decide to do, these tips will apply to it. Because being a programmer, it's very little about actually the actual programming language that you're using, but the fundamental ideas behind these languages is what's going to count more than anything. So let's go ahead and get into this. Number one, study data structures, algorithms, designing and using object-oriented programming, multi-threading, so on and so forth. You keep going down that list. These are the fundamentals of what programmers are using, what program languages are using right now. All the programming languages basically are using this. If you don't recall, Python first started off, and then eventually after Python 2, it became Python 3, which they shifted to object-oriented programming. They enforced the rules of object-oriented programming inside of Python in Python 3. And most programming languages will have that sort of built in. It's a sort of design structure that's built in now. C# is basically the same thing. C++ has been moving in that direction, and I think at this point it basically is. So that's what you want to be able to study. You want to study up on that. You want to study on programming concepts like recursion, understanding divide and conquer, understanding the whole idea of developing prototyping and unit testing. And one of the major things you can do while you're studying these things and while you're looking through these books and doing the examples is to code it yourself. So when you're watching on video on YouTube or you're watching one of my videos, you will be able to follow along, but you need to code. Don't copy and paste, right? So you're not going to become a better coder by going over here, copying something and pasting it in there and say, I'm done. No, that's really not the way to become a better programmer. So you want to be able to type that out, including things you've already typed out before. So you may have something up on the top line that you're just typing it again. Don't copy it and paste it down there. Just go ahead and type it out. It's going to make you a better coder. It's going to make you a better programmer overall. Number two is you have to understand the differences between learning examples and practical practice. Again, this is prototyping here. You have to know that there's a difference between when you go to a class and they have you doing this busy work, or they have you doing something that says, okay, just you know, this is an if statement, and they give you these examples, or the biggest example of is how you develop classes, right? So one of the well-known ones is when you make a class that's like a car, the make and the model. A lot of times when they're doing that, they're not really showing you a practical version of how to put that together. They're showing you something that's going to get you to understand how it works. The practical version of that will be a bit more complex, but it still utilizes the fundamental values in which they put forward. So understand those differences. Understand there's a difference between what you're doing in class sometimes and actually building a prototype of something that needs to work with other people. And so once you understand that, you are able to go into a learning environment, learn from that, and translate that to a practical version of that using prototyping, documentation, teamwork, and all that other stuff, and have something that you'll be able to use in the future. Number three, understand the tech stacks. Understand what APIs are and how to integrate those things. You know, an example of these would be Node, AWS, MySQL, Kotlin, Docker, GitHub, React, those sort of things. You really want to have a good sense of what they are. That doesn't mean become an expert at all those things. Have a good sense of what they are, how they integrate into programming. Where would you be as a programmer if you work with a team that use these things? And understand a little bit about libraries. Now, you know, I understand that a lot of programmers believe, hey, I'm going to be the greatest programmer in the history of all life, in the history of the universe. So I don't really need anyone's help. No, you do. In fact, every programmer uses someone else's help. Every programmer has to have help. I don't even care if you opened up Visual Studio and you just open up the template program and just hit play. Just by you doing that, you're utilizing Microsoft's work. You're utilizing their libraries. They're already putting that stuff together. You didn't have to do anything. They did a lot of the work for you. Now, the only time you might think that you're not using someone else's work is when you're dealing with C++, let's say, or a language something like that. Nope, you're still using someone else's work because you're using someone else's APIs, you're using someone else's libraries, you're still using someone else's work 90% of the time, 99% of the time, when you're doing something that's worth doing, that's going to go to market, that other people are going to use. So get this out of your head. Get it out of your head that, you're going to be doing everything yourself, or you got to know everything. You have to know where everything is. You got to know where your references are. You got to know your team. You got to know how to communicate. Yes, you do have to know those things, but you don't have to know every single detail about every library that is in existence in programming, because no programmer knows that. So then we want to talk about number 4. Number 4 is writing down things on paper. Yeah, I know you're going to be working in the computer, but most programmers don't understand, beginner programmers, let's say, they don't understand that the first step to becoming a better programmer and developer is writing things down on paper. I know you've heard of a whiteboard, okay? That's in essence basically almost the same thing in a way, but that's when the project manager had written some stuff down on paper. Now he has to translate it to everyone else, so he goes to the whiteboard, or she. In any case, you now understand that it is imperative to become, if you want to become a better programmer, better developer, you have to know how to write it down on paper. Now, you also have to know your documentation. You have to know backstory stuff to your app. You'd be saying, well, Professor Stalbert, what are you talking about, backstory? What does story have to do with me becoming a better programmer? Every program that's on the market, or that's enterprise, or that's worth buying, or that a team worked on, has a backstory, whether you know it or not. Even companies, they have a backstory. Go look at their business plan or their pitch deck. They have a backstory. They may not be telling you, but they are all following a backstory. So the idea here is basically understand that documentation is king. Without proper documentation, you don't have anything that's probably going to go anywhere anytime soon. That's including stuff that you work on your own. So this is why when you're coding, there's all these libraries and all this documentation based on a library. Even when you go to GitHub, like a repository, one of the main things that they enforce is that you have a README file, right? And so understand that documentation is very important. It's how you're going to become a better coder. So what that means is when you're doing your own projects, make documentation. When you're working with a team, enforce the idea that you guys need documentation. Always enforce that. Remember, every movie that's made, every game that's made, every product that's made, every application that's made, every business that starts off with documentation. It's not an idea. Everyone has an idea. Ideas don't mean anything until they're on paper. Once they're on paper, they can easily come to life. So remember that. Now, number 5, you have to realize your mistakes. And how do you do that? In coding, you have to learn how your design may have been messed up. So how do you do that? Well, you start off by actually developing something. It's something small. Hello world. It really doesn't matter. Then going and looking at how to expand on that. As you expand on it, you're going to be coming up with errors. So understanding error handling, threading, increasing the capabilities of your application, learning how to do clean code, refactoring, test-driven development, that sort of stuff. That's all going to help you become a better coder. And you start off small, and then you end up big. Don't look at code that's too complex in the beginning. Look at simple stuff that you can add to, refactor, change, or fix. And that means that you should be looking at other people's code. You should be fixing other people's code. A lot of times it's better to have friends who are learning with you. If you don't have that, just go online, look at other people's code, change it, make it better, that sort of stuff. That's number 5. Number 6 is learn UI development. But look, I'm just going to be a programmer. I just want to sit there and program. I understand that's what you think a programmer is. That's not what's going to make you a better programmer. Code alone does not make you a better programmer. It makes you a better person who understands how to code. But you won't really understand the ecosystem in which you intend on working in. Okay, that's a main thing. So not many programs are going to be developed without a user interface. Not many. And sometimes the user interface is just text. Sometimes it's like the user interfaces that you all know in Windows and Mac and on your phones. But there's always a user interface to some extent so humans can use it. Now, if robots are using it, AI is using it, may not need a user interface, but a lot of times you're going to need a user interface. You're going to need some sort of interface. So that way people can be able to use it and it's user friendly. So learning a little bit about that development on the scale of user interfaces would be wise. It would be best. And that's what's going to make you, that's another piece of this puzzle that's going to make you a better programmer. Learn to work with a team. This is a major component. Now, okay, I understand that you think, you've seen the pictures of the guy or the girl they got the hoodie on and they got their computer and they're typing away, they're hacking away, right? They're all alone in a dark room and they're hacking away, or they're out there in the wilderness with animals, hacking away, hacking into the brains of the animals, doing something crazy with computers that could never be done before. I know that's what you think programming is. I know everyone thinks a programmer is a hacker, but no, a programmer is a programmer. You got to get it out of your head that a programmer is a person who sits alone in a room. That's when you're learning. That's true. You're sitting alone in a room. You're hacking away at something. You're working at it, but you're still not alone. You're working with a team. You're always working with a team of people, unless you're doing something on your own. And now your team just happens to be libraries and other things that you're using. And in the end, it's still other people's work that you're using. And in the real life, if you're trying to get a job doing this, you definitely need to know how to work with a team. Now, what does that mean? That means your personality needs to be worked on a little bit. You got to learn how to work with other people. You got to learn how to compromise. You got to learn how to negotiate. You got to learn how not to be upset or offended by anything or everything, So that's your package. Then you have the other package to where you then have to learn how to work as a team through documentation. And so you got to, when you walk into Amazon, they're going to walk in, they're going to say, well, here's our documentation. Even when you're doing something on Visual Studio, the documentation is going to be everything. So the team is already there. Most of the time, you're going to be working on something that someone already developed if you're going to be getting a job programming. I rarely had a job in the past where, as a programmer, where I walked in there and they were just waiting for me to show up. As a freelancer, you might run into that. But not if you're just trying to get a job doing that for someone, or a company. No, Amazon didn't say, hey, we can't wait till Joe Schmo comes so that we can make our Amazon company work. No, most of the programmers who work for Amazon right now, didn't develop what Amazon has. They didn't develop what Google has. They simply work with the company and they learned the system. They may have even had other programming language background, but they weren't hired for the programming language. They were hired because of their understanding of the logic, the structures, data structures, and so on and so forth, the algorithms and that sort of stuff. So just remember that. No, it's not the hacker with the hoodie on. I don't even know what you're doing out there with a hoodie on in the middle of the forest, hacking away at something, but that's not a coder. Somebody needs to, you already look suspicious. If you're out there, if you're at a tea shop and you got a hoodie on and you're hacking away, you're typing away, everyone knows you're a hacker. You look like a hacker. You got the glasses on, you're covering your head. It'd probably be better for you to wear a suit, wear a tie, be smiling, and then type away like you don't know what you're doing. That actually is a better hacker. But no, you will have to work as a team regardless of how you do this. Okay, so get that image out of your head that a programmer is like a hacker where you're just sitting up there by yourself doing something. And by the way, even hackers use APIs. Even hackers use libraries. They're not doing it alone most of the time. So remember that. And as a matter of fact, I know people think hackers are good programmers. No, that's not true. Hackers actually use applications. They use applications to do their work. Meaning almost anybody can actually become a hacker if you wanted to try that. If you want to be foolish enough to try that. Because you have to have a little bit more knowledge about a lot of things in order to do that. So I'm suggesting that you don't try it and that you just follow what I'm saying to become a better programmer so that we can have a decent job doing something. And so now we're going to go to number 8. Number 8 is learn to develop data-driven applications. Now, everything is data-driven. You go ahead, open up Windows 10, open up Windows 11, open up iOS, open up anything. It's always going to be data-driven. And these days, it's going to be connected to the cloud. It's going to be connected to the web. So you need to learn a little bit about that. You definitely need to learn about databases. And that's including JSON database, the file-based database like JSON. relational databases like MySQL, so or MS SQL. You want to learn about SQL, NoSQL, server client architecture, that sort of stuff. Now, I will admit, when I was going through school, I did not like database, but whether I like it or not, I had to do it, and I still have to do it, and I have to do it a lot. So it doesn't matter whether I like it. Now, what I do like about databases, database structures, and the whole architecture is when it works in synergy with the application or with the game or with whatever. That's when it becomes fun. And so that's another thing you really have to remember, that when you're doing stuff like this and you have to do databases, maybe you don't like it or maybe you do love it, whatever it might be, just understand it's just a piece in the whole puzzle. So this is number 8. Number 9, don't get stuck on a particular language. Like I started off, I said the person who asked was talking about C#. It doesn't matter C#. No one's really hiring you because you know C#. You don't walk in there and they say, hey, you know C#? And you go, yeah, I know C#, you're hired. No, that's not how it works. They're not really looking at that. They're looking at your ability to complete a task within a given timeline. That's one thing they're looking at, because time is actually money when it comes to the world of computers. So they don't want you, trying to finish Hello World for 5 days when somebody can do it in 2 minutes. So remember that time, they're paying you so that way you could do things within a reasonable amount of time, so that then they therefore can go make money. So that's why you have to learn how to manage your time to complete requirements or a required task that a team asks you to do. So you may be doing one piece and someone else is doing another piece, but they all have to come together at the same time, because they're not paying depending on the language you know, but they're paying for your abilities and your ability to best engineer and using best practices to complete a given set of requirements. They're paying you for your experience. So experience does count. That's number 9. And finally, number 10, you have to make something. You have to develop something. Make something. Go out there and make a game. Go out there and make an application. Show all your skills combined in one. And in fact, a lot of times, most companies will hire you based off of what you made. They're not going to look at your resume and hire you. You already know that a resume doesn't get you hired. A resume simply gets you into the door. Then they're going to do some tests. They're going to put you in front of a computer. They're going to ask you, what does this code do? Or explain this algorithm. They're going to give you some of these tricky algorithmic tests. I did a video a while ago showing how Google gives the tests and how to pass some of these tests. A lot of people will do it. So you can go out online and see these videos. The point is, that's the second thing. The third thing that supersedes all of those is that you did something impressive. You did something that actually shows your ability to project manage, your ability to go ahead and complete a task, your ability to manage and create documentation. Huge. Documentation is huge. Your ability to code and use UI development to create something that's worth putting to market. If you were going for a job and your resume got you in, but you didn't quite have the degree, but you developed an award-winning game, or you developed a mod to a game that's pretty impressive, and you work with a team doing it, you're going to get in over the person who has the master's degree. The master's degree doesn't show them anything that you've done except that you have the rigor to complete school. Here's the other thing you have to remember. When you go into the market to become a programmer, everyone else has a degree too. So why does that make you important? Everyone else knows the fundamentals of programming. Everyone else knows how to do if statements and algorithms and data structures and all these other things. They also know that. So if everybody knew the same thing, what exactly makes you so special? Your projects and the end result of those projects. Here's an example for you that may help you. Imagine I show up and I want to become a director for a movie. And you go online and you can see my movies. So I show my movies, right? And then another guy walks in and he just did Lord of the Rings. Who do you think they're going to hire? Now, while I would love to be the main director of some big budget movie, I would not be hired because that guy just worked on something that's much more superior than what I worked on, because the team was bigger. The amount of money on the line was bigger. And it all came together and they were able to finish a product. And he was part of that team. he's more valuable in their mind. And so that's what you have to understand. The building of your skills on top of all that is what's going to make you special. Your degree doesn't make you special. Your degree is standardized. Everyone has to have that in a way, to some extent. To some extent, you got to have the ability to show that you can finish some sort of schooling. And I don't mean that you have to have a degree from college. It could be a degree from a boot camp or something like that, or some certificates. Certificates are king in this world, so certificates will be great. Okay, that's just baseline. All right. Now after that, you got to show them what you've done, and your resume is not it, and your degree is not it, and your ability to go through a conversation with them is not it. So it's a culmination of all those things, and then the icing on the cake, actually the main cake, is going to be the product that you completed. So start a project today. It doesn't really matter what it is. Start working with a team today. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what the product is. As long as you have documentation, the team will be able to work out. And make sure it's like-minded people who are interested in growing with the team. So these are the top 10 things that's going to make you a better programmer. And I know some of these things seem like, oh, that's not directly related to programming. Programming is not directly related to programming. It's a whole ecosystem of things. It used to be a long time ago, yeah. I mean, back in Windows 95, yeah, it was just basically Windows 95. You put it on your computer and that was it. But now, think about it. When you normally get a program, most of you may not even remember buying any sort of hard disk or hard drive. CD, if anybody's buying CDs anymore. USB. They normally get it online, which means most of the companies out there expect that everyone has some sort of online access and that every application will have some sort of online connectivity. It is rare that companies are making any kind of program that does not have some sort of online connectivity. So understand that. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time.